friends, it's Gwen. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to sit down and go through all of the romance books that I read this past week. If you don't know, it was Romance-a-thon from the 12th through the 18th, and I read 8 books in 7 days, and I just wanted to review all of the books that I read in case you didn't feel like watching the daily vlogs, or if you just haven't gotten to them yet, you want to hear kind of my final thoughts. I thought I would just wrap up Romance-a-thon for you. So these are the books that I managed to read during the week, and I do have individual vlogs of all of these books except for 40 Love, which I read over the course of a couple of days, but I did update in several videos my thoughts and feelings along the way. But all of these other books have a dedicated vlog for that book, so just search that book if you want more of my like in-depth thoughts as I'm reading it. You can check out that video. The first book I started with was Someday Someday by Emma Scott, which was the buddy read. It was a bonus prompt. You didn't have to read this. You didn't have to read any particular books. They didn't have to fit the prompt. You didn't have to do the buddy read. You could just read whatever you wanted. Just pick up a romance book. But I did stick to the prompts. So I read the buddy read, which was Someday Someday by Emma Scott. I ended up reading this story 3 out of 5 stars. I did talk pretty in depth about why I didn't like it, but basically it is a male-male romance story, and one of the guys had like a really bad past, and one of the guys is kind of like dealing with some drama in his everyday life. There's definitely some homophobia in here. I do like that it touched on some really important themes of the LGBT community, like homelessness for LGBT youth and stuff like that. But overall, I just don't think that the romance was as swoon-worthy as I wanted it to be. And then what happened at the end, I was just like not a fan of. So yeah, if you're wanting more of my in-depth thoughts, check out my review or check out that vlog. But 3 out of 5 stars for this one. Next up, I read Teach Me by Olivia Dade. I read this for the new to me author, and I picked this up in general, like before the readathon, because of the fat rep in here, and also because it was a story about teachers, and I absolutely loved this. I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. I loved the teacher rep. I loved the fat rep. I just loved the romance in general, but there was just something preventing me from like being totally screaming from the rooftops in love with this. But I absolutely loved it, and I definitely highly recommend it, especially if you're a teacher. Also, I love that the characters are in their 40s, so really like that. But it's about this teacher that's been working in the history department, and this new teacher comes to the school, and they have to like split her classes, or he gets some of her classes. So it is kind of hate to love, but she's not really like pissed at him, so I didn't consider it hate to love once I started reading it, because she was just mad at the guy that gave him her classes, if that makes sense. But yeah, I really liked this one, and you will see that I ended up like working through the series throughout the week. Then I read Eleanor and Gray by Brittany C. Cherry, and I absolutely freaking loved this book. I rated it 5 out of 5 stars. It probably was more of a 4.5 stars because there were a couple of moments where there was like a teeny tiny lull in the story, but I rounded up because it was amazing. I loved it. They were childhood friends, like in their teens, and then later in life, they unexpectedly like bump into another. She starts working for him, and he's very different than how she remembers him when they were younger. So I didn't know that so much of the story was going to be from when they were children, but I really did like that because I got to see them meeting, falling in love, their relationship develop, and then how it kind of broke apart. And then years later, they're reintroduced to each other, and she ends up working for him. I loved that it did have like deeper themes and meanings. It was emotional. I just loved the characters, and I loved them together, and it was just really, really cute. Highly recommend this if you're looking for that like second chance romance, or like childhood friends, two lovers. Yeah, really, really like this one. It was my favorite read of the readathon. And I read The Girl He Used to Know by 𒒂💏💂💏. Oh, I read this for the BIPOC author prompt, and I read this for the my favorite romance authors backlist prompt. I rated this 2 stars, and the story about them falling in love was cute. Well, how they were in college, because you get like 2 timelines with this one, and there's 2 POVs, so you get to see them in college, and then you get to see them 10 years after college, and you know like something happened but you're not sure what, and kind of over the course of the story you kind of get to understand that. This one made me this one made me cry, this one made me cry, and this one made me cry. All of these made me cry, but this one made me more angry than anything because, okay, so our main character, Annika, she is autistic, and she also has a generalized anxiety disorder. But that was her only trait. So she didn't have a personality outside of her autism and her anxiety. And to me, that's not enough. You know, I get that she's dealing with a lot, but like that can't be her only personality trait. And then Jonathan, he just felt really flat. So they were really 2-dimensional characters for me. I did like that she was going to therapy, but I just thought that she was trying so hard to prove that she was different than she used to be, when really she wasn't that much different, other than maybe she was like going to therapy and stuff. But what really ruined it for me, I mean, it was probably already going to be like a 3-star, just because of like, I wasn't really feeling the romance. I wasn't really like shipping them together, because it just didn't seem like they were a good fit. And even though like sometimes how he was acting towards her, I didn't feel good about it. It just kind of gave me the willies a little bit, but I'm okay. Like every relationship is different, but for some reason I just wasn't like loving it. But then the ending happened, and it was very near the ending. And I think it was like here. So it was like very near the ending. All along you're knowing the years and stuff like that. And like a really important date came up, September 11th of 2001. So if you don't know, that's when September 11th happened in New York with the Trade Center towers and stuff like that. Well, the whole time it's following them in college in Chicago and in present day Chicago. So why would either of the characters ever go to New York? They never went to New York in here, ever. So at the end, Jonathan ends up going to New York for like this business trip or something like that. And I guess that's where he was. He used to live in New York, but now he like moved back to Chicago. So the whole book takes place in Chicago, but then at the very end, he goes back for a business trip to New York, and it just so happens that it's during September 11th. So as you can imagine, he's in the World Trade Center when it's getting hit by the planes. And at that moment, I knew that no matter what happened, if he made it out and they were madly in love and they lived happily ever after, I wasn't going to be okay with that. If he died in the World Trade Center, I was going to be upset that they weren't together. So I knew no matter what happened that I wasn't going to like the ending, because there's too many emotions there for me, and that's the emotion I bring to it as a reader. So maybe if you're a little bit more distance from September 11th, maybe you won't mind that as much. But to me, knowing all that I know surrounding that event in history, I couldn't appreciate that, because literally none of the other parts of the book were in New York. So to just throw that in there for emotional, like, I don't know, I just felt manipulated, and I didn't like that. So 2 stars for this one. Like I said earlier, I started reading this at night. So like if I was done with my main book for the day, I would like edit my video and make sure it was posted for the next morning. But I started reading this one at night, which is the second book in There's Something About Marysburg series by Olivia Dade. And this one, I really wanted to love it. It's older characters. There's an age gap. And Tess is on vacation in Florida with her friend for like a birthday weekend type thing. And she meets this guy. Well, she actually has like a bathing suit malfunction and he has to like come to her rescue. And then her friend signs her up for tennis lessons and he's the instructor, and he's an ex-tennis pro player. So there is a lot of depth to his character, and I feel like, but what I didn't like about it is there were too many sex scenes, like scene after scene after scene with nothing in between. And she started off super confident, and as the course of the book happened and he started expressing like how into her that he was, she became less and less and less confident, and I am not about that life. So this one ended up getting 2 stars from me as well. And honestly, you could totally skip this book because they're never in Marysburg in this book. The only thing is that when you go to this book, you won't know Tess's backstory, but you can totally skip this one. But I read this one for cover love because the cover is absolutely gorgeous. And I read another super emotional book, and that is The Last Letter by Rebecca Yarros. This was a chunkier book. I definitely wasn't expecting to read this in a day, especially considering I didn't start reading it until like much later in the day, but I managed to read it in one day because it was wonderful. I read this for my out of comfort zone read because it is a military fiction romance story, and I definitely want to pick up more by this author in the future. You guys were like, some people were really getting down on me like, that's one of my favorite books, it was so great, I don't know what you're talking about. But the thing is, I still rated it 4 stars, you guys. It was really, really good, but it is really, really emotional. And the reason why I knocked off a star is because number 1, it just wasn't believable to me. Number 2, it was unnecessary. And number 3, I just felt, again, I felt a little manipulated. I felt like the author was like, okay, we haven't drugged the reader through enough drama. We're going to do this one last thing to ensure that they will cry and they will be ugly sobbing, which I totally did. And then the happily ever after happens. And because it's in this like last little bit, I don't have enough time to go from absolutely devastated to the happily ever after and be content with that. But I still really liked it, and I definitely want to read more by this author. And I picked up, well, I actually picked both of these up kind of at the same time. I picked up like these. So I read the first story in here, and then I read this, and then the next day I ended up reading this, and then the last day I finished these 2 stories. So if you don't know, this is actually 3 short stories in the Marysburg story collection. So this has Sweetest in the Gale, Unraveled, and Cover Me. So I'll talk about that last. But I also read Meet You in the Middle by Devin Daniels. I do absolutely love this cover, but I read this for the hate to love trope because they're definitely on opposite sides of the political fence. She is a Democrat, he is a Republican, and they work, like she works for the Senate and he works for a conservative senator. So they both work for senators. She works for a liberal senator and he works for, I'm assuming, like a Republican senator. And they, how they meet in the beginning is she's going to like tell him about a certain plan or something like that, and he kind of brushes her off and it's like, yeah, that's not gonna fly. And she gets really upset even though he is trying to tell her how to go about it in a different way, but she just gets so frustrated, and I can understand her frustration because it's like another guy telling me how to do my job, like give me a break. So the thing about this one though is it was very, very political. It was like, just like I was saying about Makeup Breakup, that book was too much about the app and not about the romance, and this one was too much about the politics and not about the romance, and my personal opinion for my personal taste. So yeah, that's that one. Don't really have too much more to say. And the last one, I finished up the There's Something About Marysburg series by reading Sweetest in the Gale by Olivia Dade. And like I said, there are 3 short stories. Sweetest in the Gale is this couple on the front, and it starts, I just love the teacher rep in here so much. Again, the characters are over their 40s. I think like one's like 47, and then by the time it ends she's like 55, but they're all like 40 plus. So I really, really like that. So these guys, this one is Candy Albright and Griff Conover. They're in the English department, and usually Candy is like this loud, bright, outgoing person, but when it's the new school year and they're setting up their classrooms, Griff notices that Candy isn't her bubbly personality anymore, and over the course of the story you find out why, and they fall in love, and it's just really, really cute. I rated that story 3 stars. The next story, Unraveled, was like, oh my gosh, this one, math teacher Simon Burnham is a mentor to the new art teacher Poppy Wick, and I love Poppy. He's very like straight-laced, you know, by the book, and she's like wild and free and, you know, go with the flow, and just how it's like opposites attract, and he's like immediately drawn to her, even though he's like, oh my gosh, she should be doing it this way, but he's just like totally attracted to her, and it's so freaking cute. Also, I just really like the unit of study that she's doing in her art class. She's doing these like murder dioramas, and yeah, where you can actually solve them, and yeah, it's just really, really cool. So really liked that one. I rated that one 5 stars. And then the last one, Cover Me, really took me by surprise. It wasn't as emotional as I thought it was going to be, considering that it does deal with, like, you know, she's going in and she's getting a mammogram for, you know, breast cancer and stuff like this, and they do find a lump, so they have to do a biopsy, but she doesn't have insurance and all of this. So her friend, it's been her friend for a really long time. He was previously married, now they're divorced. He says, hey, you don't have any medical insurance, marry me and I'll cover all of these medical costs for you. And she's like, really? Are you sure? I don't know if it's such a good idea. And he's like, no, seriously, like, let's do it. Let's just get you the care that you need. And that's what they do. But of course, they end up really loving each other, and it's so cute. So I rated that one 4 stars. So 3, 5, and 4. So that makes this book 4 out of 5 stars. So these are the books that I would skip. I would skip The Girl He Used to Know. I would skip Someday Someday. I would skip 40 Love. And I would skip Meet You in the Middle. But the ones that I highly recommend you pick up, of course, Teach Me and Sweetest in the Gale from Something About Marysburg series. Eleanor and Gray, of course, if you haven't read this, definitely read this one. And The Last Letter, definitely recommend this. Just expect to cry in both of these. I'm telling you, you're gonna cry. That's all I'm gonna say. All right, but that is my week of reading romance. Let me know if you participated in a romance-a-thon, what you read, and if you didn't participate in a romance-a-thon, let me know what you read anyway. But that's all for today's video. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're all having a lovely day or night, and I'll see you guys again in another video very soon. Bye!